Sometimes being the best of something is great, like your percentages and all that. If you look at percentages and teams that do well with percentages, you'll find that there's something magical. For the Chicago Bulls, the Colorado Avalanche, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Baltimore Ravens, they're the best, not because their teams were the best teams to win their respective titles, but because of their winning percentage. All four of the aforementioned franchises are perfect in finals, in their respective finals, but they also have the most wins for someone who's been perfect. There have been multiple perfect teams in all four sports, but they have the better advantage. The Bulls are 6-0 in a final. The Ravens are 2-0. The Blue Jays are 2-0 in their finals. And the Avalanche are 3-0 in their finals. On the flip side, you have teams like the Buffalo Bills slash Minnesota Vikings, who are 0-4 in football. In baseball, you have the San Diego Padres, who are 0-2 with the worst winning percentage. And in hockey, it's the Vancouver Canucks losing 3 times in the final without winning a title. But do you remember the basketball team? This past decades, this team actually became the first NBA team to start off their final stuff 0-3, meaning they've lost 3 NBA finals. We're going to the Valley of the Sun for this factor. We're talking about the 1995 Phoenix Suns. We're playing basketball sims. We're playing basketball sims. He's playing What If NBA. Cutter's doing What If NBA. Yeah. Oh, all the teams around the world got to know that the Raptors are number one. But what about the Bulls, Wizards, and Pistons? They all have great what ifs, stories about old teams like the Kansas City Kings and maybe even the Minneapolis Lakers. But we all know we're going to do some basketball. He's doing basketball. He's doing basketball. What if? Cutter's doing what if NBA? So what if NBA? So the Phoenix Suns started out life as an expansion team, as people wanted to move the NBA out west and try to compete. And in 1968, the NBA decided to add Phoenix as a franchise alongside Seattle. So Arizona was not really known for their sports and all that. Sure, baseball did their spring training there, but you would never think of Arizona for a sports team and all that. Baseball wouldn't come through a full major league team till 1998. The NHL wouldn't come to the desert till 1996, and football wouldn't come to the desert till 1988 for the NFL. So the Suns had to bring Arizona sports into great repute. And they had some good guys like Dick Van Arsdale, um, Tom Chambers, Walter Davis. Um, there are a few other Phoenix Suns I'm forgetting about. Well, Garfield Hurt. You'll hear about him later. But anyway, the Suns went to the 1976 final, upsetting the defending champion Warriors to face the Boston Celtics, who were a little weakened. They weren't the Boston Celtics of old. However, the Suns could not beat them, losing in Game 6. However, Game 5 saw a fantastic game in which Boston ended up winning Game 5 in triple overtime. That was the game in which Gar Hurd of the Suns, off of a inbounds pass, actually scored at the buzzer with his floating shot. Today, it would be a 3-point shot and would have been a game winner, not a game tire. And practically, the rules were there. So anyway, the Suns lost that one. And then in the 1980s, they rode Tom Chambers and had a few good runs, but not really. In 1993, they ended up picking up Charles Barkley from the Sixers for Jeff Hornacek. So, well, Kevin Johnson was still there, and he was doing great. So Barkley did his job and won MVP in 1993. However, he couldn't do it when it counted, and the Bulls beat the Suns in the final in 6 games thanks to John Paxson's three-pointer when he was wide open, just like John Stockton in '97 for the Jazz against the Rockets. So anyway, the Suns tried in '94, failed. '95 we'll talk about. But after that, like Barkley moved on to Houston, Phoenix started to slip a little bit. But that's when they ended up getting Steve Nash in a big trade with Dallas. They got Amari Stoudemire, drafted Sean Marion, and a few other Suns pieces and all that. And Phoenix looks pretty decent on that with those orange and gray jerseys. Look like one of my coats. But the fact of the matter was that Steve Nash was a back-to-back NBA MVP, which was shocking because, winning one MVP is good enough, but winning two, I don't know if he deserved the second one. Of course, no disrespect to Steve Nash, but, it would have been nice if he was not injury prone. So the Suns faltered a few times. And at the end of the day, the Suns just couldn't get to the NBA Finals. They got to the finals in 2021 with some young talent like Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton and a few other pieces of the puzzle. It was actually pretty nice because 2021, we were still partially in COVID. And those introductions from the girl with Down syndrome, that was a big Devin Booker fan. But the fact of the matter was that the Suns had a 2-0 series lead on Milwaukee, and it was like, here we go. Maybe I picked the right team because I picked the Suns because I'm like, I don't trust Giannis. Well, silly me. The Bucks won the next 4 games and won their first title in 50 years. Numerology doesn't lie sometimes, but sometimes it does. Nevertheless, the Suns keep trying, but haven't done too much lately. But that's the team 30 years beforehand, 1995, for their best opportunity. So the 1995 Suns, it was their 27th season. They actually picked up Danny Manning, Wayman Tisdale, and Danny Shays, and picked Wesley Person, 23rd overall in the draft. Paul Westphal was in his third year as head coach. He was the guy who was there for Loyola Marymount in 1990 when they were devastated by Hank Gathers' collapse on a court. I think it was in front of TV cameras. I can't remember. Nevertheless, they were the best team before the All-Star break and got 59 wins, being the second team in the West. Charles Barkley put up 23 points, 11 rebounds a game. Danny Manning was fine, and then he had a torn ligament in his left knee, which ruined his season and pretty much the playoffs. What would have happened if he was still around? KJ did his job. Dan Marley could shoot three-pointers. And AC Green, the man known as Mr. Chastity. And the fact that of the 1,000 plus straight games and all that. You won't see that every day because of load management. Wesley Person was on the all rookie second team and all that. Well, they had Barkley Marley in the Western Conference in the All-Star game, which was in Phoenix, of all places. Elliot Perry was named second place for the most improved player voting. There's cats are meowing in the background. The Suns took care of things in the first round against Portland, and then it looked like they would take out the defending champion Houston Rockets, and all would be right in the world. But then they forgot how to win, and the Rockets would go on to beat San Antonio in the conference final, and then won the championship over Orlando. Phoenix needed something, so they traded Dan Marley to Cleveland. Danny Ainge decided to retire. Forgot he was still on the team. Richard Dumas went to Philly, but he would have drug problems and be kicked out of the league. What a promising career ruined him. Trevor Ruffin was selected by the Grizzlies. They picked Antonio Lane 29th overall, which wasn't that bad. So they had Danny Ainge on the squad from BYU, who was a pretty good Celtic. Charles Barkley, who was a good Sixer/Sun Richard Dumas, whose career was ruined because of drugs. He was a promising prospect. AC Green, 1,100 plus games consecutively. Like I said, it's going to be hard to do because of load management. KJ, Kevin Johnson, California. Of course, he's ashamed of himself with what he did as mayor of Sacramento. Joe Klein from Arkansas. Suey. Antonio Lane was hurt. Dan Marley from Central Michigan, the sharpshooter. Danny Manning was hurt. That could have been a game changer if he was playing. Elliot Perry had to come in for KJ. Wesley Person, Trevor Ruffin, Danny Shays, and Wayman Tisdale. So they beat Seattle by 2 in the Pacific to be the second seed. Utah won 60 games, but because of the rule that the 2 division winners had to be 1-2 in picks, Phoenix would take on Portland instead of Houston in the first round. Denver beat Sacramento by a bit. In the first round, they took on Portland and showed them no mercy. Barkley with 47 points in Portland. Game 1 and 2, they hosted Houston and they did it. They were pretty impressive. And then they had to play back-to-back games at 12 o'clock Eastern time. Or was it 1 o'clock Eastern time? I don't know. No, I think it was like, well, no, Mountain time. So yeah, 12 o'clock Eastern time. Back-to-back days. I guess that was a weekend on NBC. But yeah, in the conference semis, they were up 3-1. All they needed to do was win at home against Houston. They lost in overtime. And then the next game, they went to Houston and lost. And then game 7, in front of an NBC crowd, that was when, who was the guy who hit the 3-pointer? I say Mario Ellie's impressive 3-pointer called by the late Greg Gumbel. And they blew up and all that. So, yeah, injuries would ruin them in a sense. Barkley tried to carry the team as much as he could. So that was huge and all that. They traded away Cedric Ceballos before the season for a first-round pick in '95. But the good news was it ended up being Michael Finley, although they traded him to Dallas in the Steve Nash trade. Danny Manning came over from Atlanta. Wayman Tisdale from Sacramento. Richard Dumas was waived. Yeah. Oliver Miller went to Detroit. He had the substance abuse problems. He went to rehab. And then he had 39 games with the Sixers. But then he is basically banned from the league. Yeah, what a waste of a talent. So anyway, what happens if the Suns actually did go to the conference finals? So the Suns would play the Spurs. Of course, you'll be thinking, wait a minute, Danny Manning was not hurt. Right, but the way that some matchup does, it's your best player. So what would happen if Danny Manning was healthy? I know probably you'll be like, well, that's cheating, isn't it? Partially. Anyway, game 1 would have the Spurs win 118-107 as David Robinson remembered who the heck he was. 30 points, 16 rebounds. KJ 21 points, Marley 20, Barkley only 14. Wesley Person, Elliot Perry, AC Green, Joe Klein, Danny Shays, Trevor Ruffin, 7 points in 6 minutes off the bench. Richard Dumas, Antonio Lane, and Wayman Tisdale. The Spurs 30 from Robinson, 28 from Avery. There's Sean Elliott, Rodman when he was with the Spurs before he went to the Bulls, and Finney Del Negro. William Anderson, Terry Cummings, former Buckeye icon, was on the bench. Doc Rivers, future head coach of many teams. Chuck Person, who was a great player for a good pacer. J.R. Reed from UNLV. Moses Malone, the veteran. Jack Haley, who was also a veteran. Harper Isley, who went to the Jazz. Corey Crowder and Chris Whitney. Game 2 would see the Suns lose 111-108 as Robinson does his magic again. 19 from KJ, though. Wesley Person, Elliot Perry, and Trevor Ruffin did score double digits off the bench, but they should have giving them better. 29 from David, down April 17. Sean Elliott would fell out in 28 minutes. The bench did okay. Moses Malone came off for a couple minutes. How about game 3? And Phoenix back home would win 111-93. KJ, 21 points, 11 assists. Robinson and Elliott both with 21 points. Chuck Person, 10 points in 12 minutes. And there's Whitney. 27 points from Barkley, 21 from KJ, 18 from Marley. Manning and Ainge just couldn't do anything. The bench was okay. They still won the game. Game 4 would see the Suns win again at home. Barkley, 24 points, 12 rebounds. Robinson with 18, Avery with 17. Person with 15 off the bench, Cummings with 11. Ali's 5 guys off the bench. 24 from Barkley, 13 from Marley, 13 from Manning, 12 from KJ. Person agreed with double-digit points. Game 5 would see the Spurs return home and win. David Robinson remembering what he was doing. KJ with 23, Barkley with 22. Danny Ainge almost fouled out. Ruffin 10 points in 8 minutes. 28 from Robinson, 20 from Avery. All that. And then game 6 in lovely Phoenix. And the Spurs would win. And the Phoenix Suns would have fallen to the Spurs in 6 games. Robinson, 25 points, 10 rebounds. So, yeah, even with Danny Manning and making it not historically accurate, the Spurs still would have beaten the Suns. So, yeah, if you think, well, oh, Phoenix is going to get the finals on your merit. Nope, the Spurs would have stopped them. So the Suns would have been ruined anyway. 25 from Robinson. Chuck Person, 14 points off the bench in 14 minutes. Trevor Ruffin had 19 points in 15 minutes. Guys should have played more. Danny Manning and Danny Ainge just did nothing. And all that. So, yeah. So the Spurs would have still taken out Phoenix. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Hey, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.